That loaf sitting in your bread bin right now, the one you grabbed without thinking, contains ingredients that would surprise most shoppers. Some of these additives are controversial across Europe. Others have been the subject of ongoing health debates for decades. Yet here in the UK, they're in almost every supermarket loaf you can buy. Over the next 15 minutes, I'm going to walk you through exactly which 8 bread brands deserve closer scrutiny, what's actually inside them, and why millions of British families might want to reconsider what they're spreading their butter on. By the time we're finished, you'll never look at the bread aisle the same way again. Let's start with something most people don't realise. The average British household consumes around 400 loaves of bread every single year. We trust it completely. It's in our children's lunchboxes, our morning toast, our evening sandwiches. Bread feels safe, familiar, almost invisible in its ordinariness. And that invisibility is precisely what allows manufacturers to fill their products with ingredients that many shoppers would question if they actually knew what they were. The packaging shows golden wheat fields and words like farmhouse, craft, or traditional. But flip that bag over and you'll find an ingredient list that reads more like a chemistry textbook than a recipe your grandmother would recognize. Number 8 on our list is Warburtons. Now, I can already hear some of you saying Warburtons is a British institution, a family company that's been baking for over a century. And you're absolutely right about that heritage. But heritage doesn't necessarily mean simple ingredients. Pick up a standard Warburtons white loaf and examine the back of the packaging. You'll find something called E472E, which is the code name for mono and diacetyl tartaric acid esters of mono and diglycerides. That's quite a mouthful for something going into bread. This is an emulsifier, and while it's approved for use in the UK and considered safe by regulators, there is ongoing scientific discussion about what emulsifiers might do to your gut bacteria over time. Research published in respected journals has suggested that certain emulsifiers could potentially affect the gut microbiome, though this research is still developing and no firm conclusions have been drawn yet. Many Warburtons loaves also contain flour treatment agents, including L-cysteine. Here's something that may surprise you. L-cysteine can be derived from duck feathers or human hair. It's used to improve dough handling and is perfectly legal, but it's certainly not something most people expect to find in their morning toast. And then there's the production method itself. Warburtons, like most major UK bread producers, uses what's called the Chorleywood bread process. This industrial method, invented in Britain in 1961, allows bread to be produced in under 3 hours instead of the 12 to 16 hours that traditional bread requires. It achieves this through high-speed mixing, additional yeast, and various chemical improvers. The bread never develops the complex flavours that come from slow fermentation. That bloated feeling some people experience after eating commercial bread, it may be connected to how that bread was produced. Number 7 is Hovis. Hovis has built its entire brand around nostalgia. That classic television advert with the boy pushing his bike up a cobbled hill. British heritage. Wholesome goodness. The marketing suggests tradition and quality. But when you actually examine the ingredient list, the story becomes more complicated. Some Hovis products contain caramel colouring. You might assume caramel is simply burnt sugar, harmless enough, but the caramel colouring used in processed foods is created through industrial processes that can produce compounds which have been the subject of health debates. Is the amount in one slice going to cause you problems? Almost certainly not. But consider that you're eating this bread multiple times daily, week after week, year after year. That accumulation is worth thinking about. Hovis also uses palm oil in several products. Now, palm oil itself isn't necessarily harmful, but the highly processed palm oil used in cheap bread has been stripped of any nutritional benefits and serves purely as an inexpensive fat substitute. What bothers me most about Hovis is the gap between marketing and reality. They position themselves as a healthier traditional choice. They add whole grains and seeds to packaging designs. But the base product in many of their ranges contains the same emulsifiers, preservatives, and flour treatment agents as budget alternatives. Their wholemeal bread is made by milling wheat, separating the components, then adding some bran back later. Real wholemeal should be made from flour that was never separated in the first place. That separation and recombination process affects both nutritional value and how your body processes the bread. Number 6 is Kingsmill. Kingsmill markets their Great White range heavily, but let's talk about what white bread actually does to your blood sugar. Standard white bread has a glycemic index of around 75, which is remarkably high. When you eat high GI foods, your blood sugar spikes rapidly. Your body responds by releasing insulin. Then your blood sugar crashes, leaving you tired, hungry, and craving more carbohydrates. It's a cycle that nutritionists have been warning about for years. But here's the particularly concerning part. Kingsmill's 50/50 bread, marketed as a healthier option because it blends white and wholemeal flour, still contains glucose-fructose syrup in some versions. This sweetener has been the subject of significant debate regarding its effects on metabolism. Why would bread need added sweeteners at all? Because it makes the product taste slightly sweeter, which research suggests may increase the likelihood of repeat purchases. It activates reward centers in your brain. You're not imagining that you prefer that specific bread. You may have been subtly conditioned to want it. And don't overlook their tasty wholemeal range. In some products, sugar appears as the second or third ingredient after flour. They've taken something that should be nutritious and transformed it into a vehicle for hidden sugar consumption. If you're buying bread that lists sugar prominently in the ingredients, you might want to ask yourself whether you're really buying bread or something closer to cake in sandwich form. Number 5 is Sainsbury's own brand, particularly their budget ranges. Supermarket own brand products often seem like smart choices, basically the same as branded versions but cheaper. Sometimes that's accurate, but with certain Sainsbury's bread products, cheaper means different ingredient choices that warrant attention. Their economy white bread contains calcium propionate, listed as E282. This preservative extends shelf life by preventing mold growth, which sounds useful. However, there has been research, including a study published in the Journal of Pediatrics and Child Health, examining potential links between calcium propionate and behavioral issues in some children. The research isn't conclusive, and regulators consider the additive safe, but it's information worth having, particularly if you're buying this bread for young children. There's also the question of flour quality. Budget bread typically uses heavily processed flour that's been bleached and stripped of nutritional value. Synthetic vitamins are then added back to meet legal fortification requirements, but your body may not absorb synthetic vitamins as effectively as nutrients from whole foods. You're essentially eating nutritionally compromised bread that's been given a vitamin injection, so manufacturers can legally call it fortified. Number 4 is Asda Smart Price. If you've ever wondered how a loaf of bread can cost 50 pence, this is your answer. Asda Smart Price bread is engineered for maximum profit through minimum ingredient cost. The flour used is typically the lowest grade available, heavily processed and chemically treated to make it workable. Some budget bread products contain azodicarbonamide, a flour improver that makes dough more elastic and easier to handle industrially. Here's what most people don't know. Azodicarbonamide is also used in the production of yoga mats and shoe soles. When it breaks down during baking, it can form compounds that the European Food Safety Authority has raised questions about. The amounts used are within legal limits, and manufacturers will correctly point this out. But you might reasonably ask why you should eat bread containing a chemical also found in gym equipment when alternatives exist. Asda Smart Price white bread also contains minimal fibre, often less than 1 gram per slice. Your digestive system requires fibre to function properly. Without adequate fibre, food moves slowly through your system, and you may experience the bloating and discomfort that so many people have come to accept as normal after eating bread. Number 3 is Tesco Value bread. Tesco follows a similar approach to Asda in their budget ranges, but with their own variations. Many Tesco Value loaves contain modified wheat starch. This is starch that's been chemically or physically altered to change its behaviour in food production. The modification process can involve treating starch with acids, enzymes, or other agents. The resulting product helps create a softer texture that lasts longer, but modified starches can be harder for some people to digest, potentially causing bloating and digestive discomfort. The term vegetable oil on Tesco's ingredient lists deserves attention. It's deliberately vague and can include heavily refined rapeseed oil, palm oil, or soybean oil. These oils are highly processed and contain omega-6 fatty acids that, when consumed in excess, may contribute to inflammation. What frustrates many consumer advocates about Tesco is their market position. As the largest supermarket chain in the UK, they have enormous buying power and could potentially source better ingredients while maintaining affordable prices. The choice to prioritise profit margins over ingredient quality is a business decision, not a necessity. Number 2 is Lidl's Baker's Life range. Lidl has grown dramatically across the UK, and their in-store bakery section seems fresh and appealing. The smell of baking bread fills the store. It feels artisanal and genuine. But here's what most shoppers don't realise. Lidl's Baker's Life range uses a technique called part baking. The bread is manufactured in factories abroad, primarily in Germany and Poland, then partially baked, frozen, and shipped to UK stores where it's finished in the in-store ovens. The lovely smell you experience is the final baking stage, not the actual bread-making process. Why does this matter? Part-baked bread requires additional processing to survive freezing and transport. When bread is frozen, ice crystals form within the dough structure, rupturing cell walls and breaking down starches. When it's thawed and finished, the texture never fully recovers. To compensate, manufacturers add extra gluten, gums, and emulsifiers to maintain that soft, fresh feeling. These additives may be harder to digest and could potentially trigger sensitivities in people who normally tolerate wheat without issues. The salt content in some Lidl bread is also worth noting. Certain loaves contain over 1 gram of salt per 100 grams of bread. 4 slices could provide nearly a third of your recommended daily salt intake, and you haven't even had lunch or dinner yet. Number 1, the brand that warrants the closest attention is Aldi's Village Bakery range. I want to be absolutely clear here. This isn't about being anti-Aldi. They've made grocery shopping more affordable for millions of British families, and that matters. But their bread is where cost-cutting becomes most apparent. Village Bakery. White loaves contain some of the highest salt levels I've encountered in UK supermarket bread. A single slice can contain nearly half a gram of salt. If you're eating 6 slices daily, which isn't unusual for someone having toast for breakfast and sandwiches for lunch, that's approaching half your recommended daily salt intake from bread alone. The NHS recommends no more than 6 grams of salt daily, and excessive intake is linked to elevated blood pressure and cardiovascular concerns. But the most frustrating aspect of Aldi's Village Bakery range is the deceptive health positioning. Their superseded products look incredibly nutritious, covered in various seeds that suggest wholesome goodness. Then you examine the ingredients and discover the base is still heavily processed white flour with added gluten for texture. The seeds are largely cosmetic, sprinkled on top for visual appeal. You're paying extra for what appears to be health food, but is fundamentally the same processed bread with a seed disguise. Aldi uses centralized manufacturing at massive scale, producing hundreds of thousands of loaves daily. At that volume, ingredient sourcing focuses on cost above all else. Flour comes from the cheapest suppliers, often blended from wheat across multiple countries with limited traceability. So what should you actually buy instead? Look for bread from independent bakeries with fewer than 7 ingredients. Real sourdough made with just flour, water, and salt is ideal because the slow fermentation process breaks down compounds that cause digestive issues and lowers the glycemic impact. If you must buy from supermarkets, seek out brands that prioritize simple ingredient lists or consider the organic ranges, which typically contain fewer additives. Making your own bread is genuinely easier than you might think. A basic no-knead loaf requires about 5 minutes of active work and costs roughly 40 pence. You control exactly what goes in. What do you think? Are you eating any of these brands right now? Have you noticed how you feel after certain loaves? Drop a comment below because I genuinely want to hear your experiences. And if this opened your eyes, share it with someone who needs to see it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.